This episode is brought to you by Classical Conversations. To find out more, please visit classicalconversations.com.
Facebook could be fined $5 billion.
We about to be rich.
Man.
You're not getting any of it.
LGBT discrimination heading to the Supreme Court.
Oh, they're going to hear it?
Supreme Court. And we got a trans politician in Iowa. He's going from Republican to Democrat.
How do you
What's
know?
Up? And would you abort your gay son? We'll get to that. We got. You just look at me like that. That's good. We got director Tim Mulvaney coming on.
Yes.
He did a great. He's got a great project called Patterns of Evidence. Excited to have him on. And we're going to discuss the Democratic race, Castro Burrito 2020.
We're working on the name. We're working on the name.
Castro Salad 2020.
Castro something.
It has to do with something with donkeys.
Yep.
And Hunger Games.
Whatever
there we
it is.
Go.
Yeah.
Castro or Survivor.
Or Jazz Act 2020.
This is a family show.
Okay, so listen, this is what you can do right now. Yep. Right now, if you're watching on Facebook or even if you're podcasting, go ahead and send us an email.
Crosspolitic@gmail.com.
Do what Gabe said. And if you're watching live right now, go ahead and sit in the little comment thingy. Go ahead and tell us the title.
Nicknames for donkeys. Eeyore? Burrito? Burrito.
Yes.
Castro Burrito?
Yes.
It seems so
2020.
racist.
Poncho? Poncho? No.
Why? No.
Pedro.
Man.
I'm just
what
reading.
website is this?
I don't know. Hee-haw.
Yep, there you go.
Hee-haw. Can you get us the sound effect?
We need a sound effect for that.
That's a horseman. I can do a horseman.
That is good, man.
Too.
Oh, man. Oh, Burrow.
I want to see what everybody else is writing. I want to know what everybody else is writing right now.
Donkey Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Donkey Kong games.
Donkey Kong games. So we're going to cover.
What was the one that Cooper laughed at?
I don't know.
Castro Gumbo.
Castro
2020.
Castro. Can you have a Castro salad? For the vegans?
For all the vegans, Castro salad.
But here's the thing. What are they trying to do? They're trying to make communism edible.
That's right. And it's not.
Yes.
Right? They're trying to make it palatable to Americans.
So Castro poop.
You don't want that. 2020. Hey, this is a family. I said Jack.
I said poop.
Castro Burrito.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to wrap that thing up, put some cheese on there, put some federal funding on there. Here we go. I'm going to give you
Darwinism.
Free lunches on there.
Trans burrito.
Hey, I'm going to give you a bigger federal refund. Right there.
I'm going to give you a burger and call it a burrito. Trans burger 2020.
Put a little blackface in there.
Ooh, Castro.
Cooper's wife.
This is getting bad.
Castro blackface burrito. 2020. Coming up, third segment.
Okay. All right, so Facebook is expecting up to a $5 billion fine from the FTC Commission.
Okay.
For all the data breaches from this past year.
What actually happened?
So Facebook's had a number of data breaches this past year. They also had.
Do you know if they got my data?
I mean, I assume.
I know a large portion of California was affected.
But I'm not in California.
Did you ever get a message from Facebook saying, hey, your data might have been affected, please?
I don't read emails from Facebook.
It would have come through your Facebook account.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Did you get that message?
I didn't.
No, I don't think I did. I don't think so.
I can't remember.
Doggone it. Wait. If I got the message, does that mean I get money from Facebook?
Well,
I might have got the message.
That's the thing that bothers me about this is the FTC which is
the Federal
Trade Commission, and they're a really silly regulation organization. I was on the phone with a client about a month ago. Is a for-profit college, and I was talking to them about their marketing, and I said, "Man, you guys should do this and release this commercial." And and they said that's a great idea, but the problem is the FTC Commission will come after us if we do a marketing video like this. And then
Why?
I said, well, because what they were doing is they're going to highlight one of their students who was a president of an organization and basically say, hey, this student graduated from our college and this is what they're doing now.
If
really
you
cool.
come to this school, you might be a president too of another organization.
And that's what they said that was what the FTC would say is like, we would basically be saying that we're guaranteeing anybody who comes to our school can become president of or CEO of or vice president of.
So they can't have a selling point to their company? Is that what's going on?
Public colleges can do this. Like University of Idaho could do this, but for-profit colleges can't because they'll be
Isn't it the other way around?
Yeah, I know.
Why?
Because that's how the Federal Trade Commission treats for-profit colleges.
But what's the argument?
The argument is what Federal Trade Commission is saying, you're misleading your audience.
But why can a public university do it and a private for-profit can't?
Yeah, that's the question.
Because one belonged to Massa and one don't.
Yeah.
So
the problem is they're still taking Massa's money. So the for-profit college still taking
so they're all they're all the Masses.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So Massa's just saying he got a favorite kid.
But because
you don't like redheads.
You don't like
because profits are evil.
Oh, because you know what? Oh, so the government doesn't get any profits.
Yeah. It's penalizing profit.
Yeah. Anyways, so back to the FTC
where did
commission.
They get $5 billion?
Is because of all the data breaches. There've been pretty massive data breaches in this last year, and even the last 5 years on Facebook. But particularly this year, apparently they're going to get potentially fined up to $5 billion. And I want to know why does the Federal Trade Commission get the money?
Well,
in biblical economy, there's restitution there.
Do we know that's what's going to happen?
It'll go to the FTC.
Well,
commission.
we know that I won't get any of it.
Yeah, well, that's
you won't get any of it.
Right.
You know,
that's the thing is. Well, number one is I need to understand a little bit more clearly what the nature of the crime was.
So what it seems like is that Facebook had a company, I think it's Cambridge Analytica.
Okay.
So that was 2 years ago.
That was
or 3 years ago. So that's not falling under this fine.
Right, but this is how what the breaches were. You know, this
you're saying
this is how it got started.
This is an example of what the breach is.
This is their first this their first charge against them was on this one, right?
Oh yeah.
So this is not the so what happened
Cambridge
was
Analytics.
They had access to Facebook.
Yep.
Okay.
And they mined people's private information unbeknownst to Facebook. So it said, and then something between like 50 to 87 million people.
And what they do with that material? What do they do with that information?
From what it seems like is that they sold the information to political pundits or political candidates, some being Ted Cruz, so that they can target particular people based on their income, fundraising.
Very detailed data.
Right.
So how Facebook operates right now in their data is they kind of summarize data points.
Right.
But Cambridge was able to get into Toby, white male, Moscow, Idaho, loves church. You know, that, I mean,
how much money you're making?
Trying to find people that would be the prime targets for Ted Cruz or whatever.
Cruz,
yeah.
Okay, so what crime was committed against me?
You know, I think the crime was that you made a covenant with Facebook.
Okay.
You and Facebook were under covenant.
Right, when you signed up.
I agreed to their user agreement, and they promised not to give my private information to another company.
Certain
type
of private information to some company.
So
at least to protect it or to let you know if they were going to do so.
Okay.
Right.
So, but then what harm? So they broke their contract.
Yeah.
That's clear.
Yeah.
In biblical law. So this is the thing is we need to get back to like the
what
Bible.
What does the Bible say?
What does the Bible say? What kind of crime is that? So they broke their contract.
Yep.
Yeah. When you break a contract, you have to admit that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
this is close to theft.
Put right. But what do they need to put right?
This is negligence. So I think if I'm looking at this, I think this is a form of negligence.
Okay.
So I think that something was not protected that was given, which is your name, your identity, your location.
They promised a certain fence.
Right.
And a fence got broken into.
Right. And that they didn't necessarily, they got broken into, and some of your cattle got out.
Okay. But then
data cattle.
Yeah. So then in biblical law, so you go to Exodus 22, it'd be one of the classic places you go to in terms of understanding theft, damage, accidental damage, intentional damage to property. And the biblical pattern is restitution.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Put it back.
Yeah.
And
they don't owe us any money.
If it was, that's right.
Unless you can prove in some way that this breach caused you financial harm.
Right. In some instances, it would be a 20% restitution.
Yeah.
In some instances, it's a
fourfold.
Double.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a 3 or 4-fold.
Well, yeah, it depends on if you get busted in some senses or if you come out and you honestly say this happened.
Or it depends on if you took away their livelihood and then maybe you made a bunch on it.
If it was intentional.
But in this case, I'm trying to figure out what harm. Let's say they did it to me.
Yeah.
What harm did they do to me?
So there isn't necessarily any monetary harm that could be done. I still feel like that what they need to do is if they need to keep their word to you and make sure that any of that information that got out, they need to fix the gate.
Right. So
and
put the gate back up.
Put the gate back up, grab all the cattle, whatever
and
your
get
information.
the data back.
So whatever the company that has your data, they need to take their funds, go gather that data back and secure it and say, hey, we're sorry this happened. It was just a form of, I look at this again as negligent and not honoring the contract between each other. But there isn't any sort of monetary.
Right. I don't know what they would owe me precisely.
Yeah, right. They don't owe you anything but an apology and your name
other
fixed.
than recognizing it, then getting the data back, scrubbing those servers.
But what if they
the
made
fence
a
back
bunch
up.
of money off that negligence?
Who?
Facebook.
But they didn't.
Which they did. They sold the data to Cambridge Analytics.
Or they didn't. I don't know if it was sold. That's the part I couldn't understand. If it was sold or if Cambridge came through and through their back doors.
Let's say, what if they made a bunch of money off it?
Yeah,
they profited.
They made money off of your name,
off of breaking contract with me.
Yeah, I think in that kind of situation, if that could be proven,
then you might distribute it.
It seems to me that some portion of those profits ought to be distributed to those who were.
It depends on the contract that you signed up for with Facebook.
That's true.
The contract that you're under with Facebook right now is you're there for free, and it's possible that they will sell certain parts of your information to people. That's already agreed to.
Yeah, but even if so, we even CrossPolitic, we've entered in agreements where it's exchanged for goods and services.
Sure.
Or where we're just providing our logo to a merch store or something like that. But if
And in Exodus 22, here's the thing:
no cash is exchanged.
The Bible actually has wisdom for this, and Christians have neglected the Word of God for so long that we don't even know this. But in Exodus 22, it actually says that, for example, if you rent something from someone, and it breaks. When it's being rented, it says you don't owe them anything because the damage was covered in the rent.
That's right. You pay for it.
But if you borrow it,
then you replace it.
Yeah. Part of my problem with this, though, is that I feel like with the Federal Trade Commission, I look in this case as being a referee. If I look at this kind of, let's say this is basketball.
I don't think they should exist.
First, I think about this as a basketball analogy. So just the context of this. If they're a referee.
That's how you got Gabe to go along.
Basketball. March Madness. If they're a referee, the way that this is set up, the way the unbiblical laws that we have now are set up, we put the referee, we give them a place on the scoreboard so that, like you were saying earlier, if there was some real harm done, there's something that you lost that they owed you, what the Federal Trade Commission does is say, you're right. Now pay us $3 to $5 million. So it's like you getting fouled, a technical foul against you, and the Federal Trade Commission goes up and say, all right, we're going to shoot 2 points. And they shoot 2 points and they score. Yeah. You know, and so it creates a situation where the offender and the referee have a partnership and they make money against you.
Which is terrible.
That is wicked.
It's wicked, yeah. Which is, all of this is, by the way, a great test case for whether we should trust anyone with the idea of reparations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they can't manage it.
We can't even figure out how to find Facebook. And we don't even know what justice is with that kind of situation. How would we ever be able to begin to untangle what happened with slavery?
Well, just scoot it back to
150 years ago.
Forget how, Facebook is massive. So that's, I can see that being missed, right? But even on the smaller levels of just thieves and stealing, well, they don't have to pay back restitution to you. They have to pay back to the state. It's the state versus the thief. It's the state versus the criminal. It's not you versus the criminal.
And that's the problem is you're paying. The biblical standard is you put it back. Right. You pay back who you actually harmed. Or you put back whatever you broke. Not that you pay the referee.
Right. That's right.
Speaking of referees, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court hearing this LGBTQ discrimination cases. But before we get to that, Tennecore is an American design, development, and manufacturing company focused on creating concealment products built for everyday use.
Yes, they do.
Do you have one?
I do.
I got two.
I don't have one.
Well, you need a
Tennecore designs uncompromising products that work. Their design is like the Velo appendix carry holster. Our purpose built to keep your gun hidden and optimize performance. If you believe in protecting the people you care about and practical everyday carry, then Tennecore products are built for you. Tennecore supports reliable guns trusted by professionals, including Glock, SIG Arms, and Smith & Wesson. Go to tennecore.com/discount/crosspolitic or use the code crosspolitic for a 10% off.
And Father's Day is coming up in June.
Yeah. And there's a patch. It's an exclusive cross-politic patch that you get if you buy a holster from Tennecore. It's the only place you can get it in the world.
That's right. We have a couple in the studio. That's it.
I have my tablet patch.
That's right. So the Supreme Court actually is going to be hearing a couple cases. There's 3 cases on the LGBT discrimination protection for employees. So they're basic,
Great.
right? So we've talked about the Equality Act.
This is going to be great.
Oh, what could go wrong?
So we talked about the Equality Act a couple, maybe a month ago, where a couple senators, I think it's Cory Booker.
No, it's House.
And
right?
Is it the House?
It's the House.
The House is pushing it. That's right. Nancy Pelosi is pushing the Equality Act, which is trying to
we blame Cory Booker for everything.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to update the 1964 legislation, civil rights legislation.
That's right.
But this case is actually challenging the current 1964 legislation to be able to allow for transgendered.
Well, they're going to beat this to the House.
Right. So it's not. They're not challenging the civil rights legislation, but they're asking whether the civil rights legislation already includes transgenders and homosexuals.
That's right.
And whether they can appeal to that, in which case the Equality Act wouldn't even be necessary.
Right. Exactly.
They would say we already got it. And here's the thing. In terms of modern Supreme Court exegesis of the constitutional law, there's not really, we're in bad shape, guys. Because I mean, the Supreme Court justices have been reading into the Constitution and constitutional law for decades now, saying that even what was not intended in the by the original framers of the Constitution can now be read into it. I mean, this is how we got a homosexual mirage. This is how we got sodomite marriage. Was them saying, well, they didn't anticipate this, but the right to pursue happiness for all men and women includes the right of marriage. Therefore, you can't be denied to homosexuals.
It's amazing. It's amazing that they can see that, but they can't see the right to life.
Yeah, but babies do not have the right.
How do you see that? Okay, wait. We'll talk about this more in the third segment. Have you figured out a name yet for this Democratic race party? The Castro Burger?
Pinko Burrito.
Okay, when we come
2020. Pinko Burrito 2020.
Tim Mahoney when we come back on Cross Politic.
Hi, I'm Andrew Klavan, host of The Andrew Klavan Show on the Daily Wire. I'm going to be speaking up in the chimney of northern Idaho this summer at Called Conference, which runs from July 15th through the 19th. I'll be giving my testimony, which is Christianese for the story of my conversion to Christianity, as detailed in my book, The Great Good Thing. And I'll be talking about why Christians should be involved in writing movies, like the movie I wrote, the Gosnell movie. Called Conference is a worldview conference for Christian high schoolers. They want to challenge you to become the next generation of cultural leaders. So if you want to register, go to www.calledconference.ninja. I hope to see you there.
Classical Conversation supports homeschooling parents by cultivating the love of learning through a Christian worldview in fellowship with other families. We provide a classical, Christ-centered curriculum, local, like-minded communities across the United States and in several countries, and we train parents who are striving to be great classical educators in the home. For more information and to get connected, please visit our website at classicalconversations.com. Classical, Christian, get connected, get community.
So good.
Thanks, Dan.
So good.
Appreciate that.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast
This is
Network.
a rodeo? I don't know where I'm at. Oh, no, don't stop. We have guests, gang.
Hey,
On the
okay.
phone.
With us on this segment, we have Tim Mahoney. He wrote and directed and produced Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus, his first feature-length documentary film, which has been an investigation that has lasted 12 years.
Whoa.
He also authored a new book by the same title, so you can get a book version of it. He's got 25 years of experience in media production. Mahoney created Thinking Man Films, a production distribution company that explores the world we live in and encourages people to question what they've been told about culture and science and history and religion. So, Tim, thank you for joining us on Cross Politic.
It's great to be on your show, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks so much. So, Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus. Why this? Why this film? What are you hoping to accomplish?
It's not The Exodus. We're interviewing him on
the book.
The Moses stuff.
The Moses. Okay,
Do we need to restart this?
No, he can go from right there.
Okay, yeah.
Why this?
Well, you asked a good question because I started with the Exodus first, and then the next film was the Moses controversy. And some people would say, well, why did you start here? And why did you take 12 years to investigate it? And to answer the question is that the Exodus story is really foundational, and it's referred to throughout all the other books of the Bible. Almost all the other books of the Bible go back to the writings of Moses.
Right.
Even Jesus talked about Moses and the writings of Moses.
Wasn't Deuteronomy one of Jesus' favorite books? And how much it was quoted?
I don't know. I actually haven't figured out which is his favorite book yet.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying in terms of how much it was quoted.
Yeah, when you get to heaven, you get to ask him that question.
Is that your favorite book?
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, as a fellow filmmaker, I just noticed something here. You can just share the secret with me. I want to know how you got funding for a 12-year investigation.
I guess I'm a good salesman.
Oh,
You need to teach me some of those tricks.
Not saying a good salesman, that's for sure. That's what that means.
So I actually want to go ahead.
Let me ask you. Let me answer this, that very good question, because it is not. I half kidding. I think I am probably good at selling it. But if there is something that you're supposed to do, and I'll tell you, I was the president of the Christian Film Association, and the first year I was like praying, well, what do I tell people? And like, what's the theme? And the theme I felt after praying was prepare the way of the Lord. And so this is good for everybody to think about. So you go, okay, I get that, because that's we understand we're preparing the way of the Lord. Thy will be done, thy kingdom come, right, guys?
Yeah.
So all the work that we do, all the things we're supposed to be doing, we're preparing for the kingdom of God to come. But what I heard then was you do it backwards. You have to know is what you're doing, is it of the Lord? What is the way? And am I prepared? And so you ask me, well, how did you get it funded? Well, if you're working on something that's of the Lord, what will happen is that other people will sense that, and they will join you in the calling. And that's what happened, is that people said, hey, what you're doing, I think I should be helping you with, and how can I help you? And then you have to figure out the way, are they investing? Are they donating? Are they, on the crew? All the right things.
Yep.
And then the final thing was prepared. And I think that was the hardest thing for me was, I go, well, does that mean like Rocky, where you're doing push-ups and you're doing all these kinds of things, there's some kind of preparation, but you have to be prepared to give back to the Lord the thing he called you to do in the most difficult times.
That's really good.
So those are the...
That's really good, because I was about to start selling $50,000 handkerchiefs real quick to fund my next film. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
So the Moses controversy, what were some of the artifacts and historical patterns of evidence you found compelling regarding Moses writing the first 5 books?
Well, that was a challenge at first, until I heard about the fact that people were criticizing the fact that Moses even existed and that he had the ability to write, and they were saying this goes back for over 100 years now, where people are saying that Moses didn't write the first books of the Bible, that they were actually written by many other people over the centuries, maybe hundreds of years later. And so we started to hear about this new evidence for the earliest form of the alphabet. And it shows up exactly at the time, earlier than what most people think, but at the time when our first film showed that the Israelites lived in Egypt. And this alphabet is, someone took Egyptian hieroglyphs and modified them and turned them into a phonetic form of writing. And that basically was what this next film was, the Moses controversy was. The controversy is he didn't write it. That if he didn't write it, then even the words of Jesus, when Jesus says, I'm just looking here, he says, for if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? So some of you say, well, what difference does it make whether Moses wrote? You start to realize, well, if Jesus believed he wrote, and if people are saying he didn't, then you can see how that attacks the entire credibility of the scriptures all the way through.
Yeah, so push this into the corner a little bit. A lot of Christians are not very worried about the Old Testament. They're New Testament Christians, right?
Gideon folk.
Right? And
even red letter Christians.
So push this into the corners, Tim. Who cares whether the books of Moses are true or accurate or not? Aren't we just Jesus Christians?
Yes, exactly. That's what I started to realize too. And what matters is just what I told you. If Moses didn't exist, then the words of Jesus are not credible.
Yeah.
because Jesus believed Moses existed.
Right.
And a number of things that come through the Old Testament. The whole idea, the Old Testament is, the New Testament is mirroring the Old Testament. And once you have a deeper understanding of this legal agreement, the Bible, I've come to realize, is like a legal agreement. That's why you have all these names in there. You know, it's called the Old Covenant and the New Covenant.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is that if you don't think that it matters that the Old Testament happened and you start chipping away at that, exactly the people that are attacking the Bible then start to attack, when I say the Bible, meaning the Old Testament, then they turn right to the New Testament.
Right.
And then they start attacking that with things like the Da Vinci Code and all sorts of other kinds of ideas.
Right. That's just the beginning of the attack. So,
well, this has been going on in the church for, centuries, for, doubting the 6-day creation accounts of Genesis.
Right.
How do you, if you don't believe in the 6-day creation account of Genesis, then how do you believe in the 3-day resurrection account of Christ?
It's all connected.
The authority of Scripture is
it's all connected.
Yeah, right.
You start pulling a thread out, and the whole thing comes unwinds. Yeah.
Yep.
So, how does your work support the trustworthiness or the helpfulness, particularly of the law of Moses? I mean, that's a significant part of the 5 books of Moses. We live in a culture that doesn't know heads or tails about God's law.
Yeah.
We don't,
or man or woman.
Yeah. What is a man? What is a woman? What is justice? What is social justice? How does your work support the helpfulness of the Mosaic law?
I'm coming to that in the future films. So I've laid out about 50 hours of investigative filmmaking. And so far I've got 4 done. I've got 4 more that we're working on this year. We're heading towards the next films are going to the Red Sea miracle. Are miracles possible? We look at the route of the Exodus, and we look at the different suggestions in the routes, and we're going to look for chariot wheels. We're going to look for all those things you've heard about, because we've been filming that for 18 years.
Wow.
And then we're going to take the journey to Mount Sinai. So we're building this foundational case where you're going to start seeing patterns of evidence. And what has worked really well in that approach is that it's a scientific approach. So some people just find one thing and they build a whole narrative around it. But if you can find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things in the right sequence, it's much stronger to build a case on that. So the next question of the law is really going to be because it's tremendous, by the way, what you're talking about. And I know that we're going to talk a little bit about the Moses controversy, because God told Moses certain things about creation, correct?
Right.
That we were created male and female.
Yeah.
That we were to be fruitful and multiply. There are certain commands that were there, and the law was given. All these things were going to be leading up to that. But these first films had to deal with the credibility that was being attacked earlier. And that's the reason why we did the Exodus and the conquest. Then we did move towards the writing of Moses. And I'll tell you that, like you said, the Moses controversy is exactly what we're faced with right now.
Yeah.
The questions of questions of gender, male and female,
Right.
Or other things, the questions of marriage, the questions of justice, and the law. And where does the law come from? Does it come from man, or does it come from God?
Yeah,
that's really good.
So that's what we're heading towards, and we're in the middle of a huge Moses controversy, and nobody really sees it that way yet. But I'm telling you that that's what the Moses controversy is, the culture issues that we're faced with right now.
That's really good, because the church in the modern church, by de facto, doesn't believe in the first 5 books at some level.
That's right. No, absolutely.
Right? We don't believe in how God's law shakes out in our modern culture.
This is as much for Christians as it is for non-Christians.
Yeah.
So how is this touching down? So you're setting this up. How is this going to touch down? So maybe you can speak to, from your filmmaking, what you've researched, just to the gender issue, and maybe to the reparations issue that's going on. And shoot, why not? Just hit all of them. Just give us a sample.
Well, I haven't. I'll be honest with you. I've dealt with the Exodus and the conquest, more so the Exodus, for 12 years, and then I moved into the writing thing in the last year and a half. The issues of, let's say, civil rights, And if you look at Martin Luther King Jr., he was quoting scripture often in his sermons. And if we think about the issue of created in the image of God, and once again, there were so many people that were involved with Genesis, like Answers in Genesis and Creation International, lots of different groups that are dealing with that whole part of it. I ended up, I think, not being called into that because there was already a dozen different ministries and different groups and filmmakers that were working in that category. Somehow I moved into Exodus and what was happening there. But who wrote the book of Genesis is Moses. And what he wrote was that we were created male and female. That's what the Bible is saying. And what I look at is, I say I'm an investigative filmmaker who was raised as a Christian, and now I want to know what's the truth, because the world is telling me one thing, the Bible's telling me another. So as I'm investigating this, I look for patterns that confirm and affirm. I'm taking a risk. Can I find a reason for these things? Can I find evidence for that? And the films have been affirming the stories of the Bible. That's what the first two films have done. And so if I speak to, because I know you guys are dealing with lots of political issues, you raise Moses up and you got all sorts of, this is where it all begins. With the writings of Moses, right?
Yeah.
And so I would go back to, the Bible says they're created male and female, and we are only one race. We are the human race. It's not like there's different, because we kind of have this terminology and what we call things and certain things. We're different kinds, but we're all the same race, is from what I've heard from the interviews that I've done.
And you sounded like a Presbyterian to me. I mean, that's just.
I think you're some charismatic there. I'm just
a little bit, but I think I don't think we can undersell this at all. I mean, this is huge.
Yeah.
If creation isn't true, if Genesis 1 and 2, I mean, that's the get-go of all this, is not true, then it really is all up for grabs.
Yeah.
If we evolved, randomly mutate, I mean, there is inherent racism in Darwinian evolution.
Darwin. Yeah, that's right.
You can't say we evolved and then say, and now you have to affirm everybody's inherent dignity.
Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
You just made that up.
Yeah. Exactly. So.
Yeah. This is why I call it thinking man films. You get it? Because if you start to think about it, and what I have learned is that a number of the scholars, a lot of scholars have created something that doesn't have much of a foundation. But it's beautiful when you look at it. But if you go down to the second level, we started to realize when we did these interviews that you ask the first question and they have a pat answer. You ask the second question that goes deeper and it gets a little bit longer. Sometimes you ask the third and fourth question. Now you're really into something.
Yeah.
Because those answers, I've actually had some people say, well, I don't know much more about that. Or I can't answer it. You're going to have to talk to so-and-so. You started to realize that the guy behind the curtain has created something that looks good, and a lot of people haven't dealt with the things that they haven't dealt with. But as you start to shine a light on, well, how does this work? Like you were just saying, how do you have, human rights? Where do they come from if it's evolutionary?
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, what is your website and how can we check out your film?
Patternsofevidence.com. Patternsofevidence.com.
And this
is where it is, and the two films are there. And we actually have a weekly email that goes out called Thinker Updates, where I have a weave where we're basically investigating patterns of evidence, which I love. It's the scientific approach, right?
Yeah.
And to investigate the Bible. And sometimes you can say, well, why would you do that? Why don't you just believe it because, some people have said, I just believe it because it's true. And I grew up that way. I understand that. But there's a lot of people who don't. And when people say, well, just because you believe it, it's not true, by the way, they're going to tell you that. You can say, oh, yeah? Well, why do you say that? Explain to me why you can say it's not true. And they explain it, and I go, yeah, but you haven't answered these questions. In fact, how do you explain all this evidence over here? And they basically, as I told you, that's when they start to ignore the evidence. And I have archaeologists that have told me, oh, we find evidence for the Bible all the time. And you know what we say to each other? Oh yeah, that's the Bible. That's the Bible. But we can't talk about that because
wow.
if we do, we'll get fired.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And you know what? They're probably right. Tim Mahoney, patternsforevidence.com. Check him out. And while we go to break, Tim, could you give me some of those investors' names so I can get an 18-year budget? I need one of those things. We'll talk about that when we get offline. More Cross Politic when we come back. I'll keep your secrets, Tim.
At Logos Online School, we believe learning should be accessible. Homeschooling shouldn't stop you from staying connected. Enjoy classmates from across the United States and the whole world, coming at you 4 days a week and 32 weeks a year. We believe learning should be engaging, a group of like-minded students who love God and their classmates. Learning should also be customized, with more than 50 different classes offered throughout the day. Take one class or join us full-time. We believe learning should be inspired. Our knowledgeable instructors enthusiastically engage the students. The goal? Hearts that love learning. Lastly, learning should be affordable. Committed to making Christian education reasonable for all families. From $620 per class for an entire year to $2,232 per year for full-time students. The best option on the market. Join us at Logos Online School.
If you need a little red meat in your diet, Pastor Doug Wilson.
They want to keep the government out of our bedrooms. What are they talking about? I built my house, which means I built my own bedroom. The government told me how far apart the studs had to be in my bedroom wall. They dictated how thick the sheetrock had to be. They mandated how far apart the sheetrock screws had to be. They had policies on the configuration of those sheetrock screws. They have laws on the size of the windows and what kind of glass I can have in them, and there are stern legal warnings on the mattress tags. What do you mean you want to keep the government out of our bedrooms? The president is probably contemplating right this minute the establishment of a bedroom czar.
To enjoy more red meat of this kind, check out the podcast on iTunes, or for more blogging of this particular nature, blog and Mayblog at DougWills.com. Kind of sticks in your teeth, don't it?
A whole new world, a new fantastic point of view.
Castro Burrito
No one
2020.
to tell us no, or where to go.
Stop it.
Or say
Oh,
we're
man,
stop.
only
Toby, bring it in quick.
Sharon, where are you? Save us. Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Thank you to our club members making this possible.
Yes.
I think.
Making Cross Politic great.
Making
Again.
Cross Politic. Welcome to the third segment. This is Castro Burrito 2020.
Yes. That's a
I think you said
revolution
that.
2020.
Castro Salad
Absolutely.
2020.
That's right.
And the jostling has already begun with Andy McKean, Iowa's longest serving Republican, switches parties.
Trans politician.
He's a
He's a tranny Democrat now.
Well, huh? No.
You know,
maybe he always was a
How
Democrat.
does that?
he was
I know,
he was
seriously.
a, he
What's
was
wrong
a
with you?
cross-dressing Democrat.
He was a cross-dressing Republican?
Yeah.
How does that work? I'm
I
so
don't even know.
confused.
And did you guys see this week Joe Biden?
Yeah.
He's running for president.
He's officially
He's
in?
official.
Castro
Okay.
Gumbo.
And he released his campaign video.
And a brave young woman lost her life. And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides?
Biden is 76 years old.
That's true.
He's 76 years old.
And the Democratic Party's old,
might not,
too.
He might not remember everything.
Sleepy Joe?
Yeah. So we had to do a little research for Joe.
Oh, yeah.
To make sure what he was referencing for Trump was accurate.
Because he falls asleep a lot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, here we go.
And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
So,
Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, huh?
well, that was a long clip, and Joe probably fell asleep.
Through the first half, he was watching, and then
Yeah, I mean, he just fell asleep, and he said, and that was it. Yeah, because
the second half would sound like that Trump really didn't say what Joe's trying to make him say.
Yeah, but this is the thing. In the
saying.
Castro Burrito Hunger Games.
Yeah.
This is what you're gonna get.
This is
And the thing is, you guys
I'm
actually
gonna do that again. The Castro Burrito Hunger Games. You have to fight. I mean, this survival.
Yeah.
Like this is like what's that show called?
Hunger Games?
No, the other Survivor.
Survivor.
It's like
it's based off Darwin.
How many people are on the island?
I don't know.
How many people
There's like 20
I'm a
or
Christian.
something like
I
that.
pray when Survivor comes on and read my Bible.
No, I'm talking about the Democratic race for president.
Yeah, like I said, I pray and read my Bible.
with the 2020 that's coming up.
It's sort of like also like what's the chef show? You know, like where you like if you don't
Chopped.
Yep. It's like Chopped.
I watched that one.
I thought you prayed.
After I get done.
It's like Chopped meets Survivor
Fight,
meets
Laugh,
Hunger
Feast.
Games, and they're all trying to make a communist burrito.
And it don't look like it's gonna taste good. I ain't
But here's the
tried
thing.
it.
Here's the thing. You got to go. We're gonna send out a link to that interview with Trump. Okay, that'll come out in our email list. Sign up for our email list if you guys want to be on it. Because you got to listen to that whole.
The whole interview,
the whole thing.
Oh,
Trump
he was a boss.
He was owning it.
Yeah. And even in the video, Biden's video, he's all the sweet talk about Charlottesville and Jefferson.
Yeah.
And Trump's like, and are you gonna take down the statues of Jefferson?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He owns slaves.
He asked the
Washington,
reporters.
too.
He said, "Do you like Jefferson?" And the reporter's like, "Yeah."
No, he's like, he is a slave owner. He's a slave owner.
All right, so you guys might be thinking that we're just a little extreme in labeling this Castro Burrito 2020.
Have we got a name yet on
Pinko
Facebook?
Burrito.
Pinko Burrito 20. You guys might think we're pushing it.
Commie Burrito.
Bernie Sanders doesn't.
But I remember, for some reason or other, being very excited when Fidel Castro made the revolution in Cuba. I was a kid and I remember reading that. And it was just seemed right and appropriate that poor people were rising up against rather ugly rich people. And I remember, again, very distinctly, a very distinct feeling. I was watching the debates. You remember the famous Nixon-Kennedy debates. That was the first time the presidential candidates actually debated. And I was becoming increasingly interested in politics. Didn't know much, but was interested. I remember sitting in the student lounge at our dormitory watching the debate. And at that time, well, we can talk about Cuba now, I was very excited and impressed by the Cuban Revolution.
He said that twice.
You done messed up, Aaron!
Really?
So Castro Burrito 2020 is real.
Oh,
it's real.
How many people from America are trying to run over to
Right, getting in boats.
I'm just trying to say
they are making makeshift boats
how
from
that revolution
Cuba
work out for you
to Florida.
Yeah, there's
we got club members who support us and who hate this.
I got to pull a Black Panther moment right now and say, Democrats, this y'all king? This y'all king? This is supposed to protect you?
Is he leading in the polls?
Yes.
He is. He's currently number one in the polls now. Now that Biden's entered the race, you
gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah, there's in 1987, credible estimates of Castro's regime's death toll ran from anywhere from 35,000 to 141,000, with median of probably in the neighborhood of 73,000 Cubans killed by Fidel Castro.
I was just thinking about this. So we have a Republican now that's going from Republican trans, whatever you want to call him. We need to send Trump some sort of thank you card.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what he's doing for us is marking out how who's really hiding in our party, who's not with us.
Yeah.
This is one of those Gideon moments. He's taking people down to the river to drink water.
And this is what good leaders do.
That's right.
Good leaders actually thin the ranks.
Yep.
And scare off the fakers.
Yeah. Just by nature of their leadership.
Yeah.
They aren't even going out and doing
because
it.
they're a well-defined leadership.
Right.
Yeah.
They say this is what I stand for,
right.
and it actually makes a stronger coalition.
That's right.
Because you know what you're standing for, and even in churches, I mean, people, pastors who do this, oftentimes people are like, well, people are leaving.
Yeah.
And I don't often hear, but we ought to hear more of, like, maybe that's a good thing.
It is. Look, if I'm in the trenches, and we are in the trenches, make no mistake about it. If I'm in the trenches right now, the last thing I need is somebody who's not going to hand me ammo.
Yeah.
You understand? Because the first place I'm pointing my gun.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a Democratic possible nominee for president. Openly praising Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
This is a Castro burrito.
Well, in Sanders' administration, Castro would probably be able to vote.
have said that you believe that people with felony records should be allowed to vote while in prison. Does this mean that you would support enfranchising people like the Boston Marathon bomber, a convicted terrorist and murderer? Do you think that those convicted of sexual assault should have the opportunity to vote for politicians who could have a direct impact on women's rights?
Here is my view. If somebody commits a serious crime, sexual assault, murder, they're going to be punished. They may be in jail for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, their whole lives. That's what happens when you commit a serious crime. But I think the right to vote is inherent to our democracy. Yes, even for terrible people.
Oh, so
the marathon bomber can vote.
Yeah.
Under Sanders administration.
Here's the thing, you guys. Sometimes you end up in debates and discussions because of your disobedience upstream.
Come on now.
Oh, man.
We are having this debate and argument and discussion because we started disobeying God a long time ago when it came to criminal justice.
Why are you playing right now?
We rejected biblical criminal justice decades ago, and now we find ourselves surprised with major problems to deal with.
You read my mind, boy. You better say that.
Here's the thing. Humanism is always dehumanizing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Humanism destroys people. And so in the name of humanity, we've locked up some 1.5 million people in U.S. prisons, treating them like animals.
Right.
Almost worse than animals, because Peter wouldn't allow this.
Right.
Peter wouldn't allow this. This is worse than animals.
If only we could get them to think of people as animals.
Yeah, we'd be winning.
Well, they do. They do.
I mean,
they're evolutionists.
Slavery is alive and well in America, right? It's called the American prison system.
Yep.
In biblical criminal justice, sentencing is almost always restitution.
That's
We
right.
talked about this in the first segment.
We sure did. Yep.
Pay it back.
Yep.
Put back the damages.
We wouldn't be talking about voting like this if we did it the biblical way.
It's restitution, exile, or death penalty.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then what's the need for all of our tax dollars to go to keep the prisons funded and we wouldn't even need prisons.
We see
it creates jobs, though.
It sure does.
It
sure does.
And a mammoth tax burden because we have to pay for cable television for these people.
Now, guess what? I rob you from your house and I take a bunch of goods. I get 3 years. And guess what? You get to pay for me to live there with meals 3 times a day.
Exactly.
You get
cable TV.
Right. This is wicked.
And then an education that I want too.
You know, you can get your master's in jail.
I can get a master. Hey,
You
you
get
know
an
what?
education.
We're going about this wrong. Forget paying for college. Just go rob somebody.
Yeah, go get thrown in prison.
You know, we're already paying for it. Universal college.
What we see in biblical criminal justice is that anyone who does not deserve the death penalty is basically allowed to continue working, having a family, and being a productive member of society, even if they have debts to pay.
That's right.
And those debts to pay are not to society.
Yeah, to the person who they offended.
To the person they wronged or harmed.
Not to the FTC.
Not to the FTC. Not to the police station.
That's right.
He's supposed to pay it back to those
you know,
they've wronged.
This is because we have completely abolished biblical form of slavery. The biblical form of slavery actually deals with this.
Yeah.
Because now a person, one way or another, they're indebted to the person that they offended, and they need to pay that
until
back.
that debt is paid.
And if
That's
they
right.
can't pay that back, how the Bible deals with it is they're going to be sold for the profits by which they can pay the means back.
And they have to work it off.
So I don't want that person working in my house. I don't want them paying me back because they've already offended me. But you might have a field that doesn't have any sort of connection with you, and you feel comfortable having to work on your field, and you buy his time.
Right.
Now, what this does to the criminal is it allows him to say, okay, I want to pay this off faster.
Right.
It teaches him how to work hard. It gives him skills and allows him, like you said, to be an active part of society again. But when you abolish slavery completely and you refuse to see how the Bible deals with this, then what you get is a worse form of slavery and the highest numbers we've ever had.
Amen, Knox.
That's the thing is, so what the Bible teaches and recognizes is that slavery is actually in a fallen world inescapable. You will have people for various reasons enslaved.
That's right.
The question is are we going to submit to God's word and his wisdom because God understands the nature of the world, he understands our fallen natures, and he understands what it means to be human.
That's right.
Or are we going to rely on our own wisdom? But we people, when we reject God, Romans 1 says, we profess ourselves to be wise and become fools.
That's right.
Come on now.
And we destroy one another. We harm one another. And so I think you're absolutely right.
Well, this is what the social justice warriors don't want to admit, is that the Bible is a book about slavery and how to become a free slave.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
free from sin, free from chains, free from
death. Free from all of it. That's exactly right. And so the logic of the gospel is towards freedom. But but humanism is always trying to short circuit the gospel.
Right.
Humanism men want to save themselves. They want to be their own gods.
Yeah. That's right.
I mean, this is what abortion is all about. This is what all the trans stuff is all about. Is we want to rule our own destinies.
Yeah.
And so we take matters into our own hands. And if we can't see the way forward, we abort our babies.
Well, and we don't just want to rule our own destinies. We want to rule other people's destinies
Inevitably.
too. We want to be master. We want you to be slave.
You
right?
can't claim to be God and then say, "Oh, but I'll stop here."
No, we want to lord over everybody.
And this is why the Castro Burrito 2020 is going to be insane this next couple months, right?
This is humanism wrapped. This is humanism and Darwinism and tyranny and malice
and Marxism
wrapped in a big tortilla.
I don't want any of this gumbo.
Democratic Party 2020. So CNN is doing their little town hall thing with all the top 5 presidential candidates, Democratic presidential candidates. The top burrito makers. And Mayor Pete, he had his chance on the town hall. Pete, yeah.
Pinko Pete.
Pinko Pete. We're going to get some sort of trouble for this. I just know it.
And he, was asked about, his religion at the town hall, and he said God does not have a political party.
Okay.
Oh, man, so good. So deep.
God doesn't have a political
party. God doesn't have a political party.
A bunch of Christians are excited about that.
Okay, we're on board there. And then he goes on to say, he says, it can be challenging to be a person of faith who's also part of the LGBTQ plus whatever community. And yet, to me, the core of my faith is regard for one another.
Was he standing on a car when he said that?
He's
or
not.
on a table?
That's not.
He's in CNN.
Doesn't he stand on things?
No, that's the other guy.
That's Beto.
Oh, Beto. Oh, I can't keep up with all these burrito makers.
And then he goes on, he says, and part of God's love is experienced according to my faith tradition is in the way that we support one another, in particular, support the least among us. Now,
that would include children, right? So he's talking about...
he's obviously pro-life, right?
I thought he was obviously a pedophile.
So, but I love Franklin Graham's response was great. He nailed it. He tweeted out in response to Mayor Pete, Pinko Pete, president. And so this Franklin Graham, he says, presidential candidate and South Bend Mayor Pinko Pete is right. God doesn't have a political party, but God does have commandments, laws, and standards.
Is it Moses wrote?
That's right. He gives us to live by. God doesn't change. His word is the same yesterday, today. And then he tweets out a follow-up tweet on this and says, Mayor Pinko Pete says he's a gay Christian. As a Christian, I believe the Bible, which defines homosexuality as a sin and something to be repented of, not something to be flaunted, praised, or politicized. Marriage between man and woman. So Franklin Graham just brings it on Pinko Pete.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to go. But so I just want to say this real quick.
Join the club. Sign up.
Yeah, all that. And just for the record, don't trust anybody who doesn't understand how human flourishing works.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
He doesn't.
Well, this week I got blocked by Sister Theology.
Way to go, my man.
I think I'm excited.
I think I got unblocked.
But she retweeted Elizabeth Warren, another one of our burrito makers.
Am I gonna have to stop the music for
Castro
this one?
Burrito? No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
But Christians don't be duped.
That's right.
Because Elizabeth Warren was talking about protecting black women and children, and I think
don't help us.
But she wants to solve it by the state.
Yeah.
And that's why this is a Castro Burrito moment brought to you by your friends at Cross Politics.
Yep. Give us a name. We need a name for this. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics. Don't help us. We don't need your help.